Let's talk about pattern making your fly front. You have two choices here. You can do a cut on fly or a sew on fly. And at this point in the making stage, it actually doesn't matter which it is too much. The first thing we need to do is determine how long our zipper is going to be. So these are nylon zippers. They're only really good for really lightweight fabric for trousers. So I prefer like a metal pants zip with a low profile for pants because they're more durable. But anyway, this block does not have seam allowance on it. So when I sew the zipper on, the zipper stops. These metal end pieces here are going to be pretty flush with this because there'll be seam allowance up here. Now you can see that if I use this zipper, which is 8 inches, 20 centimeters, it's a little long. It goes below the hip quite substantially and almost into the crotch curve. So when you are unzipping it, you'd be kind of zipping it around the corner, and that wouldn't be very good on this for this particular size. If you're doing a plus size, there's going to be a higher rise, so you would definitely want to have a longer zipper. So that's why it's important to just evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. This one is much better. It opens up to the hip because the hip is going to be most often the widest part of the body, so you do need to make sure your pants unzip to the widest part, or you won't be able to get them on very easily. So this one is good, and it looks like it is about it's about 7 inches, a little bit short of 7 inches. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. You're just gonna put a little mark about when, oh, it actually stops right on that hip line. Okay, so we know we're gonna use this zipper. Now, what happens is we have to think about the J-stitch for our pants. Now that is gonna be below here. It's gonna go from below the end of the zipper, and it's gonna kind of come up here. And the width of the J-stitch will determine the width of our fly, which is we could also call a fly facing. It's going to turn under, whether it's sewn on or cut on, and go behind there and stabilize it for when we're sewing the J-stitch, and also to give our zipper something to sew onto. So it's really important to think about the proportions of the body when you determine how wide your J-stitch is going to be. If you are working with plus sizes and your block is much larger, if you do a small J-stitch, it is going to look too small. So I urge you to consider the size of the body when you're pattern making the fly. So I think for this body, maybe 1.5 inches wide J-stitch is going to be about right. So let me draw that in and we'll just see. So I'm just drawing a line parallel with the center front to start with. Let's ignore this line. Okay, I've just drawn it in lightly to start with, but to me, that looks about right. I'll darken it up for you. That one was 1.5 inches. Okay, you can see that looks about right. Remember, our zipper is going to end here, so then the curve of our J-stitch is going to go a bit below there. So it's going to be something like this. Okay, and then if that's where we're going to be stitching, then we need to have some seam allowance just beyond there a little bit. So I'm going to get a piece of paper and trace this off. I would normally do this when there's already seam allowance on here, but I want to do it without seam allowance so I can show you how to do the cut on fly. So always saving paper around here. So I'm just going to trace this fly piece off. Okay. Okay, and I'll add some seam allowance there. okay? And I will cut this out. If you're doing a sew-on fly, you'll just add seam allowance to your pattern and seam allowance all the way around your fly. So you'll also have seam allowance here, and then you'll sew it on. So that's a little bit more straightforward in terms of the pattern making.